What's up, Eagle Fan Kids? Here we got Cobra Kai Season 4, Episode 3, Then Learn Fly. So this episode starts off with a montage of Daniel and Johnny training all their students. And then training all their students. And yeah, so then after we have a dinner scene between Daniel, the Diaz's, Johnny, and the Russos, and funny scene, Anthony comes in, he's like, who are you? And he's like, are you the son? And he's like, yeah, and he's like, have you been like, last time I saw you, you were like chubby, and now you're like a skinny guy. And he's like, where you eat Whopper Juniors? And he's like, it's a gross bird ass. And he's like, yeah, that kid's still the worst. I love Johnny. So they start saying Miguel doesn't get this joke where Dan, and he's like, hey, Daniel's like, hey, Miguel will have to own the dealership. And he's like, you're really gonna own the dealership? And he's like, no, it's an inside joke, bro. And he's like, when Sam was little, she would walk around like she would own the dealership. And Amanda, like, Sam was born, was delivered in the dealership floor. Kind of weird to mention that. So then we see Kenny, and so then we see that after dinner, he's like, hey. So actually wait now, Miguel is talking about, and then Daniel's like, hey, like Sam will get to go to any colleges she wants. And he's like, hey, where are you going to college, Miguel? And he's like, I don't know. And then Carmen mentioned about college close to home. And then Miguel accidentally pours wine on Daniel. And he's like, oh crap, sorry, Mr. Loser. And he's like, it's just wine. And then they leave. And he's like, hey, I guess I'll be training. Daniel will be training Johnny's Eagle Fangs and Eagle, and Johnny will train Daniel's Miyagi-Do. So then we see Kenny, and he shows up in Cobra Kai, and Kreese is like behind him, like he's like, oh, you're interrupting my class. And he's like, I'm here to see Robbie. And he's like, Robbie, this kid's here to see you. And then Tori's like, you know that kid? And he's like, yeah, he mentions about how Sean was his brother, and he's like, I didn't know Sean had a brother. Robbie, how were you supposed to know? You guys were friends for like, you guys were enemies and then became friends in one episode. Like, how would you know he had a brother? You guys were enemies. Like, some of this show just doesn't. I don't get their dialogue. like from a watching the show standpoint, it's like, oh yeah, okay, Robbie didn't know Sean had a brother, but from my standpoint, it's like, how would you know this, Rob? How wouldn't you know this, Robbie? Of course you wouldn't know, because you and Sean were first enemies and then became friends after a big fight. So how would you know? He's like, He's like, no, that's why he's here. He's here because a bunch of a-holes, meaning Daniel's son and his two friends, are bullying him, and one of them knew karate. So he's like, hey, Kyler, or Mr. Park. He's like, go up against this kid and this guy, go up against Kenny, go up against Mr. Payne or Kenny, and Kenny basically just backs away, like, and they're just like, oh yeah, so and he tries again, and he backs up again, and then he's like, we have no time for weaklings in dojo. We're looking for full-blown cobras, so please get out. So, and Robbie's looking. So let's talk about the Robbie stuff first, before we get on to the other stuff that happens in this episode. So Robbie, learns because of Kenny's backpack, and this was also a scene that was filmed someone lives where this scene was filmed, where he saw Kenny talk, where he saw Robbie talking to a kid. So he gives Kenny his backpack, saying he knew where he was, and he's like, hey, I'm practicing for the all vow. I don't have time. I have no time teaching a kid karate. And then he's like, hey, it was his fault why Sean in jail, and because Sean, he saw Sean's friend stealing from Kenny. He saw Sean's friend stealing from Kenny's parents, and he attempted to beat up Kenny, but then Sean defended him, and Sean beat him up bad. So ever since Sean's been in prison, Kenny's been alone, and it's just. And yeah, so then, but as I said, Robbie's like, I have no time teaching. I can't be your tutor. I have to be practiced for the all until Kenny gets a video of I guess Anthony and his jerk crew putting Miguel milk in his locker, and then Robbie's like, I guess I have time to teach you a couple moves. What happened to you not being a tutor, Robbie? I guess it's like, hey, this kid, now that he knows the real reason why he wants to get into karate, he's like, I guess I'll help you out. And even though this is also weird, doesn't make any sense, Robbie didn't even know karate. He trained with Daniel sometime, and he hasn't been in Cobra Kai that much. So how does he know all the moves? He's able to kick Kenny, tell Kenny all this stuff, and then next day Kenny shows up in Cobra Kai, and he's like, I have no time for weaklings. And then he's like, goes up against Kyler again, and Kenny backs away, and Kyler's like, bye bye bit, and go cry home your mama, and go cry home your mommy, and then Kenny sucker punches Kyler, and he's like, he's hit me. That's crap. And he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna count that as a point. He's like, you had one chance. And then Kenny starts to leave, and then Chris is like, hold up, where are you going, Kenny? He's like, out the door. And he's like, no, you welcome to Cobra Kai. So I guess Kenny showed that he can go to the dark side too, because that's all Chris wants. He just wants people that has that born Cobra-ness. So back with Daniel and Johnny training, Miguel's worrying about how he can't impress Sam, and about how he can't impress Mr. LaRusso, because Sam was talking about how Daniel was talking about how Sam was going to college, and Hawk's like, hold up, bro, you're El Serpiente, you're an all-star champion. But just prove to Mr. Lusso that if you, and he's like, I can't wait to see what Mr. Lusso has got for it. And then Mitch is like, compared to Johnny's training, it's like a vacation. And Daniel's like, who's going on vacation? Like, Daniel? So, yeah, so Daniel's like, so for some reason, I was spoiled by the two scenes coming up in this episode, because Netflix decided to be a bunch of jerks and release this clip, and it decided to release a bit of these clips, which is kind of spoiler Netflix. I shouldn't have watched them, but I was too busy and on Cobra Kai hype to not listen to my brain and tell me not to watch it. So Dan, you're like, hey, you're gonna fish for this. And he's like, you're gonna fish for this. And he's like, where's the rods? And he's like, in the garage. You're not gonna fish with rods. You're gonna grab fish with your hands. So yeah, Miguel falls into the water trying to grab one. And he's like, I guess you're wet behind the ears. And yeah, so let me cut to the Eagle fan, the Miyagi-Do, Johnny training the Miyagi-Do, where Dimitri mentions that one time where Johnny tried to drum Miguel into a pool before he sicked a rabid dog on Hawk. So he says Eli, but I'm just gonna call him Hawk because that's his cool name. So yeah, cool reference to both season 1, good cool references to both season 1 episode 3 and season 1 episode 8. Episode 2 and season 1 episode 8. Yeah, I think so. Season 1 episode 3 or 2. But yeah, so anyway, back with this thing. Johnny's like, hey, to be an eagle, you got to be an eagle, you're not gonna let an eagle swoop down with his feet, and then Dimitri's like, I think you mean talent. And he's like, no, not talent. I love Johnny. Johnny's just so stuck in the 80s mode that he doesn't realize that eagles have talents, not claws, and So he's like, you're gonna jump from this building all the way to that building, and he's like, we're 14/8 high, and that's like we're 14/8, and that's 14/8 high, and then Nate's like, can you please stop using him for measurements? I just love this cast. This was a perfectly well casted cast of characters and actors. So Sam's like, and he's like, I can't wait forever, and she's like, yeah, you can, because we are not jumping. And he's like, and yeah. So then Johnny's like, hey, you were the one, you and your girlfriend smacked my Firebird, and she's like, she was in the back seat, and he's like, that you were the one that decided to come to my house drunk, and every dad kicked down my door, and she's like, she's a teenager, she's a teenager that makes mistakes. He's a 57-year-old man who drinks all day and hasn't figured out what he wants to do in life. Yeah. So Daniel texts her saying, he's like, I guess no one's gonna jump. I guess you got what you want, Sam. And then Daniel says, hey, don't do what I won't do. So she decides to jump over, probably with a stunt double doing the jump scenes. How could they have Mary Mouser jump over a building? Or they actually have Mary Mouser jump over a building. Who knows? But Sam jumps over the building. And yeah. So back with Miguel. Miguel's mom gets has car trouble. So Daniel's like, hey, what's, I'll help fix your mom's car. And yeah, so Daniel and Miguel hang out at a new, what happened to the old LaRusso Auto building? Did they change it? Because they're not used it anymore? Because it seems like in season 4, they've been using a new setting for the LaRusso Auto group. Amanda has a new office with a new setting. Daniel is garage in a new setting. What happened to the old one in season 1, 2, and 3? Where'd that one go? Why they just randomly change it out of nowhere without any they sold the old one, or what happened? Why do they have a new one? It doesn't matter, but why? Just tell me, show. Just tell me why you randomly out of the blue decided to change to the LaRusso Auto building. So yeah. So Daniel explains what happened, how his mom how he never went to college because his mom created a trust fund called the Daniel Fund, and he used it to what he did in Karate Kid 2 by Karate Kid Part 2 by going to see Mr. Miyagi's late father, sick father, and then he's like, then he got a bunch of money by breaking the ice blocks in that movie, but then he used that to buy a bonsai tree shop that ended up failing. So then Miguel decides to go into the koi pond and get all the eagle fangs to get into the koi pond and grabs the fish. And then as Johnny's leaving, he sees Miguel wear a Miyagi-Do headband. And he's like, oh, the crap. So then let's talk about the other stuff in this episode because we see Terrence Silver back in this episode, and what gets him to return to Cobra Kai, Vietnam flashbacks of him and Kreese, of when he said that he would be there for Kreese's whole life. So he comes back and he's like, "Turn around, you crabber," and he's like, "You couldn't leave well enough alone, did you, Kreese? You had to come back into my life. You had to come back into my life, and you had to ruin it." And he's like, "You had to come back in my life, drive up the past, and do what you did." And he's like, "Oh, hold up. You were like a old guy who's holding on to some fantasy. He's like, out of all the senses in the valley, there's a bunch of other senses in the valley, but he's like, there's no other sensei I trust than you." And he basically just starts saying, and he basically starts, punching. He basically starts, he's like, "Hooah!" to Kreese, and Kreese is like, "Yeah, there it is." So he goes into a mirror. His girlfriend is texting him constantly, and that's when he flashes back to when he and Kreese were young, and it's the same actors from the last season playing the young versions here, and we learn how Kreese got his tattoo, but it seems like Terry didn't want to do that, so he got the tattoo removed. He got the tattoo on his back removed, while Kreese still has it. So yeah, but that's when Terry decides to put up his ponytail, and Terry Silver is back. So that was a good episode. I enjoyed this one. It was as bad as the last one. Actually, the last one was pretty good. Also, the first one was pretty good upon rewatch. I enjoyed this one. It wasn't bad. It was an okay episode. I like the Kenny stuff because, Kenny deserves no cry, Like, Daniel's son is being a total jerkwad to him. He doesn't deserve it. Like, why did they bring back Daniel's son only to make him a jerk? Like, why does he have different hair? I guess that's the actor changing his hair, but that was it for this episode. I'll see you next time, and remember, Eagle Fang. Have an eagle-tastic day, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Cobra Kai. And my Miguel poster is right there. I'll see you next time.